Hello everyone. So this is UPSC History Optional Paper 1. And the first topic I will start today. This is a very big topic. If you have gone through whoever is watching, you have your history optional, and it's these things which we are going to discuss will help you even in your GS means paper 1. So now what I'm trying to ask here is, if you have seen your syllabus, if you have seen your history optional syllabus, you will realize this is the first topic, sources. First topic they have given is the sources thing. And what is sources? We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in detail. We'll see some questions as well. Let me show you these kind of questions also we'll try to discuss, and not the simplistic answer. Here, remember, whenever UPSC is asking these kind of questions and you have taken history as your optional, so you have to write answer much better than what a person who is writing in GS1. That cannot be the same, right? So you have to add some historians' points of view. You have to talk about the different dimensions and all those things. So we'll talk about that. First of all, let's go one by one and let's go slow. So sources is the topic. What does sources means? So when you see the syllabus again, so you will realize that we have to read 4 parts here in both the paper 1 as well as paper 2 of history optional. One is ancient India, then medieval India, then modern India, and the last is world history. So the last part is about the world in general. The other 3 part is more about ourselves. And here India means the Indian subcontinent portion. So ancient India, medieval India, modern India, as well as world history. So if I ask you, and whoever has history optional, and even other guys who read history, it's for everybody, these things you will be reading here and there. So if I ask you, when does ancient India start and when does it end? When does medieval India start? When does it end? When does modern India start? When does it end? And it's still going on, but hope you understand. Most of the people will be fumbling. They don't have a clear idea. So let's do the timeline first so that we can understand. Sources means we are learning history, right? It's always says that history is, we are guessing stuff. And if you're guessing stuff, from where you're guessing stuff, there are 2 sources, the archaeological sources and literary sources. These are the 2 broad division of sources from where we are knowing about history. Some portion, like let's say Indus Valley civilization, which is, and again here, Indus Valley civilization, Harappan civilization, you will read them in detail. We'll go topic by topic. So there also you will see that different historians are saying different things. Like the most famous historian, which you should be knowing about, is Upendra Singh ma'am. She's the daughter of Manmohan Singh sir, Upendra Singh ma'am. So according to her, 3300 to 2600 is early Vedic period. 2600 BC, that is early Vedic civilization, starting of the IVC period, early IVC. The mature IVC period is from 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. And mature means this is the actual Harappan civilization, when Harappan civilization or IVC was as its flourish, but at its most advanced stage. So this is the actual Harappan civilization. So here in IVC, you will see archaeological sources. They are a major component. What are archaeological sources? What are literary sources? How will you distinguish between them? We'll talk one by one. But first of all, let's try to delineate this. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, fine. Similarly, if you go to Vedic period, we'll talk about Vedic period. That is from 1500 to 600 BC. And again, it is also further divided into early Vedic and later Vedic period. So here are the major sources: literary source, books and stuff, primary, secondary books, poetry, languages, literature, religious literature, etc., etc. So it varies from one period to another period. So first of all, ancient India. If we talk about ancient India, and shall I clear all drawings? Let's clear. So ancient India, first part. So starting from Stone Age. Stone Age means, again, Paleolithic, Mesolithic phase, you will read it in prehistory and proto-history, which is the second topic. The most important thing which you can do in UPSC is, you should know the syllabus. If you're knowing the syllabus and your previous year questions, half your work is done. More than half, in fact. So ancient Stone Age Stone Age to 750 AD. So this is the period of ancient India, Stone Age. Stone Age is Paleolithic, Mesolithic, all those phases. Let me show you, and we'll deal with them in detail. So Stone Age is Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic age, based upon the stone equipments which they were using. It was getting more and more refined, and hence the period was changing. In Paleolithic period, they were using bigger weapons, then bigger stone weapons, then it got refined, got smaller, better. So Stone Age. Then to 750 AD. So after that, after the Stone Age, the most important part of ancient India is IVC, Indus Valley Civilization, which we have seen in some way or the other. It is from 300 to 1300 BC, many people say, or if you just go by the mature period according to Upinder Singh Man, 2600 to 1900 BCE. So that is one period we have to talk about in ancient India. Then there is Vedic period. So Vedic period, there are two divisions, 1500 to 1000 BCE. So that is early Vedic period, EVP. Then 1000 to 600 BCE, that is later Vedic period. And this is according to the writing of Max Müller. He was a German scholar, Max Müller, and he studied certain books. And according to that, he gave this classification. So Vedic period. So Rig Veda, all those things is there in this Vedic period. I'm just giving you a brief idea so that when we talk about the sources, you will read about them again. I will cover them topic to topic, so don't worry about it. So this is later Vedic period. Then after that, what happened during the later Vedic period and in the later instances of later Vedic period, what started happening was agriculture started happening because Iron Age was found. Iron was discovered around 6th century BCE. And because of that, iron plows were made and iron plows were used to clear the lands. Iron plows were made and they were used to clear the land, which facilitated agriculture. And again, there is a debate on that also. We'll talk about that debate. We'll talk about the questions related to that debate. That will come later on. So Iron Age. And then because of the agriculture, what happened? Because of agriculture, there was a surplus production. And if there is a surplus production, what will happen? You need somebody to, and you need to sell those surplus, which led to urbanization. People started moving from rural areas to other areas to sell their products, which led to urbanization. If there is urbanization, you need protection, because there will be other people who want to loot stuff from you, right? So that led to development of kingdoms. And that led to the establishment of 16 Mahajanpadas. Mahajanpadas in 6th century BC. Again, sir and ma'am, you will read about these things in detail once we are going to the other topic. Right now, we have to focus on this. I'm just giving you a brief idea. 16 Mahajanpada. So this is 6th century BC. So then Magadha, it became the most powerful of these 16 Mahajanpadas because it had river, Ganga. The earlier capitals of Magadha like Rajagriha, it was surrounded by hills from all sides. Later on, Patliputra, it was facilitated by Ganga, which helped in trade, which also helped them in knowing who are coming from the river route. So all these things played a crucial role. Magadha, then very fertile land. All these things led to Magadha becoming the most powerful Mahajanpadas. Then Mauryan Empire. Mauryan Empire was one of the most powerful empire which emerged during the ancient India. And they were very vast empire, but origin was there in the Magadha only. So Mauryan Empire 324 to 187 BC. Again, some sources will say 322 to 185 BC. That's fine. So Mauryan Empire, Chandragupta Maurya, he was the founder. The most important ruler of this dynasty was Ashoka, Chandragupta Maurya. Fine. Then you have Ashokan inscription, which we'll talk about in detail. And there, Ashokan inscription is an archaeological source. We'll talk about that as well. So Maurya. Then what happened? After this, there was a decline. There was no major big kingdom. And the period is known as Postmodern period. Postmodern period, which is from 2nd century BC to 3rd century AD. 2nd century BC to 3rd century AD. So this is your postmodern period. There you will see about or hear about Kushanas, Shakas, etc. So these guys, they were there, and according to colonial historians, we talk about historiography also. Historiography means study of, there are so many historians, what they are saying, what are Marxist historians saying, what are colonial historians saying, what are nationalist historians saying. That study is known as historiography. So according to colonial historians, this postmodern period was a dark age because there was no major kingdom, etc., etc. We'll talk about that as well. So postmodern period, Kushanas, Shakas, and that period time only, different school of architecture developed, like Gandhara school of architecture, Mathura school of architecture, then Amaravati school of architecture, etc. So Gandhara and Mathura patronized by Kushanas. Amaravati school, Ikshvakus and Satavahanas. Ikshvakus and Satavahanas. They patronized them. After this postmodern period, that is 2nd century BC to 3rd century AD, we have what happened after that? You have Gupta period. Gupta period, which according to many historians, it's from 318 AD to 550 AD. Golden age, it is said by nationalist historians. Nationalist historians, they said that this was the golden period. Why they said it, what was the reason behind it, we'll talk about this in detail. Maybe they were countering the colonial historians who were portraying various periods as dark age, or maybe there is something more to it. Fine, Gupta period. Then after this Gupta period, there was again a lull, and then there was one other very famous ruler who came in North India, whose name was Harshvardhana. So he's from 606 to 647 AD, Harshvardhana. At the same time, when we're talking about the postmodern period, there was a Sangam age which was going on in southern India. We'll talk about that in detail as well. Southern map. Harshvardhana, 606 to 647 AD. Again, after his reign ended, there was a lull again, there was a de-urbanization, there was a decline in economy. Why that happened, we'll talk about that. And it is said that by 750 AD, ancient India ended, ancient history ended, and early medieval India started. So right now, 750 AD till that period, you know, that is ancient history. Then medieval history is from, early medieval history is from 750 to 1200 AD. Medieval history is from 1200 to 1757 AD. At the end of Battle of Plassey, again, we'll talk about that, why Battle of Plassey is marked as the end of medieval period and starting of modern India. 1757 to 1947 is modern India. Fine. So you have a basic idea now, like what are these periods? What do they talk about? Now, let's start. So we know about our history. If you see the ancient India part, you have Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and so many period IVC. So you can even see Paleolithic, Mesolithic, they are comprising more than 90% of the ancient India. So almost more than 90% of your information is from archaeological sources, because you do understand that in the Paleolithic period or Mesolithic period, they did not have knowledge of writing and all those stuff. Maybe they had, maybe there are some stuff, maybe they have written something, we don't know. But what is the major source? The major source is whatever drawings they have done, like whatever inscriptions they have made, or whatever, like in Bhimpedka caves, etc., whatever paintings, etc., they have done. Hope you can understand. So there are certain sources which are literary in nature, but maximum sources is your archaeological sources. So sometimes now what happens, historians, they fight over which is more important, literary sources more important or archaeological sources more important. The answer is both of them are very, very important. You have to corroborate. The word here is corroborate. Corroborate means, let's say you have read some stuff from archaeological sources, so you have to supplement it with literary source. So now let's start, let's not waste time. So whenever we say archaeological source, now people generally think about buildings, temples, palaces, building, temples, palaces, but that is not all, Saran ma'am. And remember, the sources is very big, because how do you understand any topic is big or small in UPSC history? Like, based on the previous year questions. So there are so many questions which has been asked from the sources topic. And I have seen many people telling me, many students telling me that one or in many classes which they have taken, which is charging something, this is totally free for you. So they are talking one or two questions and then they are moving on to other topics. We will not do that. We'll do it in detail. Sources is very means big topic. So we have to, maybe there will be 5, 6 or 4, 5 parts of it. So I don't know, but I will do the most important questions by which you'll be covering. Any question which comes on this area, you'll be able to answer, write an answer in a much better manner. Prehistory, protohistory, small topic. Why I'm saying small topic, these periods are not small. Paleolithic, Mesolithic, these periods are not small, but the number of questions which UPSC has asked in this area is smaller. IVC, very big topic, because again, we do know that we have not yet deciphered IVC script. So there is a lot of excavation which happens. So very, very important. Megalithic, again, not that important. 4, 5 questions has been asked, but again, we have to read it because now they will ask questions. But you hope you can understand based on your syllabus and PYQs, you can have an idea which is very important, which is lesser important, where you have to focus more, where you have to focus less. You have to cover each and everything, but you do know which areas to give more importance. So sources, very, very important. If you're able to understand sources, you'll be able to understand ancient history in totality. So let's start. So archaeological sources is not only about building temples and palaces, sir and ma'am. There are 2 major things. They are there, but there are 2 other major things: epigraphy, numismatics. What is numismatics? Numismatics is study of coins. So coins do give you an idea. Like if there are too many coins, gold coins, etc., it shows that that particular kingdom is prosperous. Only then they can issue gold coins. If there is large circulation of coins, that also shows that there is good trade which is happening there. If there is decline in circulation of coins, that shows that the trade may be declining or the urbanization may be declining. So we'll talk about that. So study of coins is also a part of archaeological sources. In today's lecture, we'll focus on archaeological sources. I think in the next lecture also, there's so many questions which they have asked on archaeological sources, and then we'll move on to the literary sources. So epigraphy. Epigraphy is study of inscription. Study of inscriptions. That is epigraphy. Like if we talk about inscriptions, Ashokan inscription, Ashokan pillars, right? Modern history is incomplete about or without Ashokan inscriptions. Later on, when you will read modern empire in detail, Chandragupta Maurya, and I've just told you 324, 187 BC or 322, 185 BC, whatever. So you will see that there are three major sources of modern empire from where we are getting the information. One is Arthashastra of Kautilya. That is a literary source, right? Arthashastra of Kautilya. Again, Saran man, don't worry about anything. This is given. Modern empire, you have to read separately as well. Then Indica. There is another literary source which was written by Meghasthenes. And then the third source is Ashokan pillar. Very important source. Because in both the other two sources, they are talking about the kingdom here and in third person, like they are not the one, the people who have written the book. Let's say Meghasthenes, he is not the ruler. He was there, maybe he was there. And Kautilya, he was the minister, right? But in Ashokan pillar, you get a deep idea about the ruler's perspective, what he's thinking. He's giving different designation. He's talking about Dhamma Ghosha, Bheri Ghosha. What are those terms? We'll talk about them. So you get a deeper insight into what Ashoka was thinking, his personal views. So yes, Ashokan pillar, this is an archaeological source. Other two, literary source. So hope you can understand what is happening. For every period, every dynasty, every kingdom, you will have some archaeological and literary source. And we have to see what is important and what is not. So Ashokan inscription and Maurya, like modern empire, we see. So Ashokan inscription, very important inscription. Then there is Allahabad pillar inscription, which is known as Prayag Prahasti or Prayag Prashasti. What it is known as Prayag Prashasti, which talks about Samudragupta, who was a Gupta ruler. Then there is another inscription which is known as very, very famous inscription, Aaron inscription. Aaron inscription. What is Aaron inscription talking about? So Aaron inscription is talking about what? Aaron inscription is talking about giving the first evidence of Sati, one of the earliest evidence of Sati, 510 AD. And you do know what happens in Sati. So all these things, all these inscriptions, this is Ashokan inscription, Allahabad pillar inscription. There's a very famous story about Allahabad pillar inscription that it was a part of Ashokan pillar. It was earlier a part of Ashokan pillar. Then Samudragupta inscribed something on it via his court poet. So this is more known for Samudragupta now, Allahabad pillar. And then later on, Jahangir also inscribed something on it. So it's like they all had a certain amount of infatuation with this pillar. God knows why, but that was the case, right? So Allahabad pillar inscription. So this is an archaeological source to understand. Then Aaron inscription. Where is Aaron? Madhya Pradesh, 510 AD. So this is around the period when Gupta Empire was going on, right? And that shows you that the condition of women was deteriorating. We'll talk about that as well. Early evidence of Sati in this inscription. So these are some archaeological sources, right? And then coins. Fine. So now we have some vague idea. We have some vague little idea about what are archaeological sources. It is not only confined to buildings, right? It has so many other things included in it, including the two most important components are epigraphy and numismatics. Now let me show you some questions and we'll try to do one UPSC questions because, okay, just a second. One UPSC questions because you cannot, the more you do these questions, the more you will understand how UPSC is framing questions and how they'll be asking you questions in future. So these are two questions. Let's try to do one question today. And by that question now, many things will be getting clearer to you. So this is the question. Art and culture are reflected. This is 60 marks question. They don't ask 60 marks questions now, but they can easily ask you this question by framing a 20 marker. In optional, what happens? There's a 20 marker and a 15 marker, right? So This question, we'll do it in the next class. Let's try to do this one. Art and culture, 15 marker. Art and culture are reflected to a far, and you will also understand how to answer this question. Art and culture reflected to a far greater extent than political history in the epigraphic sources. 2017, 15 marks. Now, if you want, you can even pause the video right now and you can write your own answer, whatever you feel like, whatever you think is the answer here. Let me tell you how you will and how I will write this answer, and then you can add your points here. So epigraphic sources, we know it is not only about buildings, palaces, they are part of it. Building, palaces, they are part of it. But apart from all these building, palaces, monuments, you have inscriptions, coins, all these are part of epigraphic sources. So you have to include them. Okay? So now, and sorry, man, this is about archaeological sources I'm talking about. This is archaeological sources, right? And here they're talking about only epigraphy. So that means you only have to talk about inscription. You don't have to talk about anything else. I take my words back. Epigraphic sources, so focus only on inscription. And now here they are giving you a dilemma kind of a question, that they are saying that no, art and culture is reflected more than political history. So what is your view? Whether inscriptions are reflecting more art and culture or they're reflecting more political history. So what you can do is you can divide it into two parts. So you will start with epigraphy. What is epigraphy? Study of inscription. And then you will divide your answer into two parts. One part is art and culture. And in that art and culture, you can talk about that. What do you know from, like, what does epigraphy tell you about art and culture? Like, first of all, if you read Ashokan inscription, and we'll read about them in detail when you're reading the Modern Empire, you will see that and when they have deciphered this Ashokan inscription, they have realized that the language during the modern period, Ashokan inscription told them what? They told them that the language during the modern period, or during especially Ashokan rule, was Prakrit. Prakrit was the language. Prakrit language. And the script was Brahmi. Like Hindi. Hindi is the language. Devanagari script is the script, right? So Brahmi was the script. So this is an art and culture knowledge, right? While studying Ashokan inscription, we know that the language was Prakrit and the script was Brahmi. Then Ashokan inscription also talks or tells us about the religious plurality. This Ashokan inscription, it also tells us about the religious plurality. Religious plurality means time and again, when we will read one by one all the major and minor rock edicts and pillar edicts of Ashoka, you will see that he's talking about Dhammaghosha. Dhammaghosha. Dhammaghosha means victory by Dhamma. So there are two terms here, victory by Dhamma. And there is Dhammaghosha and then there is Bheri Ghosha. Bheri Ghosha is victory by war. Victory by war. So what Ashoka is saying, that we should focus on Dhammaghosha, victory by Dhamma. We should try to win other people by proper moral conduct, not by war. So we should focus on Dhammaghosha and we should not focus on Bheri Ghosha. So this is talking about religious plurality, and he keeps on talking about that we should be respecting other religions, etc., etc. There are other debates also on Ashoka inscription, that it is promoting Buddhism, etc. We'll talk about that later on. Religious plurality. Then air and inscription we have just discussed, and this is about art and culture. How inscription or epigraphic sources is telling us about the art and culture. We'll talk about the art and culture part, then we'll talk about the political history part, whether it is telling anything about the political history part or not. Art and culture. Second is, we have just discussed air and inscription. Air and inscription. So this is telling you this about the society. Air and inscription telling you about the society during 510 AD. Sati. So this is also giving you an insight into the art and culture. What was the culture of that particular period? So women's condition was deteriorating. Then objects, like whatever objects they were using for writing inscription, it was telling which kind of culture it was. Like Harappan people, they use steatite. Harappan people, they use something called steatite. Again, don't worry about it. We'll discuss all these things in Harappan civilization. That is the beauty of history, that whatever you're reading here in sources, since sources will give you a whole vague idea about the whole history, ancient history, then when you're reading ancient history in detail, you will enjoy it because you already have so much idea. So Harappan people, they were using steatite. Steatite, it is a precious stone as writing material. Then modern people and later period also, they were using copper plates, stone and copper plates for writing inscription. So this is giving you an idea that stone and copper was used a lot later on, and during Harappan period, steatite was being used. So that is also giving you an idea about the culture. So this is about the art and culture. You can talk about these points, that Via these, we can understand the art and culture, how art and culture is being reflected by epigraphic sources. Now, the second part here is about the political history. They are saying that art and culture is more pronounced than political history. So let's make another heading where we'll talk about the political history part. Political history part. So in political history part, what you can see that here you can say that I've just told you that modern history is incomplete without Ashokan inscription. Modern history incomplete without Ashokan inscription. So it is giving you an idea about political history as well. It is telling you about the politics at that time, how Ashoka was trying to consolidate his far-flung empire by propagating a moral conduct. So modern history incomplete without Ashoka inscription. Then even Samudragupta's true greatness is realized, or we would have not known if there was no Allahabad inscription. So Prayag Prashasti, it is telling us about the true greatness of Samudragupta. True greatness of Samudragupta is depicted here. Hope you can understand what we are discussing. I will show you my handwritten notes as well, so that you can corroborate all points. Just use these words a lot. These are very fancy words. Fine. So we have talked about true greatness. Then third is, it is also talking about institutions, sir. Via these inscriptions, now you also hear about institutions and different posts, like Ashokan inscription. They talk about various designations and responsibilities. And what are those designations? Like he talked about Dharmahattas, whose responsibility is to install these pillars and maintain Dhamma in the empire, Dharmahattas. So it gives you an idea about the responsibilities and designation of various officers also. So this is a political history which is being represented by your inscription or epigraphic sources. Institution also. Then it also talks about the political boundaries. Like it helps you in delineate the political boundaries. How it is helping you in delineating political boundaries? Because if you see Ashokan pillar inscription, so what you will realize is that these inscriptions, they have been found even in Kandahar. So you can understand, if it is there in Kandahar, if Ashokan inscription is there in Kandahar, so it tells you that there were certain portion of Afghanistan which was under Ashokan rule or modern rule. Then it has also been found in Nepal Tarai or Nepal region. So Nepal, certain portion of Nepal was also under modern rule, or has to be under the influence of modern rule. So it is helping us in ascertaining the political boundaries as well. Then what? Then a very important point, very important point related to political history is it fills literary vacuums. Like what is the meaning here is this inscriptions now, it fills literary vacuums. Why? Because when you will read later on about Harshvardhana, literary vacuums. So this Harsha guy, if you, just a second, man. So Harshvardhana, he ruled from 606 to 647 AD, and he was a very powerful ruler. It is said that if there was no inscription, you would have realized that he was undefeated. But there is an inscription which is known as Aeol inscription. South Indian inscription, Aeol inscription, very famous inscription. We'll talk about Aeol as well. Cradle of temple architecture. Aeol inscription, it says that Harshvardhana, he was defeated. He was defeated by Pulakeshin II. Harshvardhana was defeated by Pulakeshin II. So this is filling, because this whole thing is not mentioned in Ban Bhatt's Harshcharit. There was another book called Harshcharit, which was written by Ban Bhatt. So there you are not hearing about this, that he was defeated by Pulakeshin II. So what you can conclude with, I've given you all the points. So this is what you have to do. Most of the people, what they will do now in this question, they will just write about the art and culture part. They will ignore the political history part. You cannot do that. You have to write both the things. And then you have to say that both of the things are reflected. Both of the things are there in the epigraphic sources. But inscriptions, they are material remains, and they have to be understood in relation to larger context in which they are found. So it's not like you will, whatever they are saying, you will take it as it is. You have to corroborate, and the contents has to be compared with those of other inscriptions and with the information from other kind of sources. So it's not like only if Aeol inscription is saying, you will believe that he was defeated. It has to be corroborated, and it was corroborated by other sources. So these are the points, and this is what you have to write. Now, let me show you my answer, which I have written. Fine. Whatever we have discussed, those points are there only. And let me clear this whole thing out. You can always, this is the beauty of like online videos, that you can always go back and note down all the points. I have also made my handwritten notes, so I will show you that. Just a second, sir and ma'am. So we're talking about this one. This is the question: art and culture reflected to a far greater extent than political history in epigraphic sources, 2017. So you will first write what is epigraphy, study of inscription, and art and culture. How it helps you. So it helps in understanding language and script. We have just discussed Ashokan inscription. Oh, Ashokan inscription informs that Prakrit was the language, Brahmi was the script. Then again, there is something like Ashoka was talking about religious plurality. We have discussed this. He was focusing on Dhamma Ghosha, not on Bhedi Ghosha. And then there is also detail of donations, which were given to temples and monasteries, which is also talking about the art and culture. Iron inscription, Sati thing. We have discussed that, Sati thing. Oh, just a second. Fine. Then Mora village is there where they talk about Bhagavatism. Again, I'm not giving you that example because maybe you don't know about Bhagavatism. We'll talk about that later on. Then the things which they were used or using for writing inscription, like Hadappans using steatite, modern people, they were using stone and copper plates. That also tells you about the material culture. Then the one point, other point which you can add here is inscriptions. Now they also talk about certain religions, certain sects like Ajivika sect, Yaksha and Naga cults. You would not have known about them because in literature you barely find any mention of them. So that is also one point, that art and culture part is being supplemented from like the epigraphic sources. They're telling us about the art and culture part. Fine. Then political history part. If you come here, the political history part. So names and titles and other details of rulers, modern history, incomplete without Ashokan inscription. This part I have told you. This you can also do if you are writing in your hard copy. Make notes in A4 sheets. Please make notes in A4 sheets. That is very important. And then you can even scan it. And then true greatness of Samudragupta would have remained unknown without Allahabad inscription. Also throw light on the designation part, Dharma Mahamattas. This part also we have discussed. Lights on wars and battles, like in edicts. Now, this Ashokan's edicts, they have even talked about that Kalinga war when it was fought. So all these time period and details also you're getting from this. Then political boundaries. This part we have discussed, the political boundaries part, that Ashokan edicts in Kandahar and in Nepal Tarai, they tells you what were the areas where the influence of modern empire were being felt. The literary vacuum, Ayol inscription, Harsha's defeat. It is not mentioned in Bana's Harsh Charit. So these are some points which you have to keep in mind. And then the last part. This is a very good conclusion, very, very good conclusion. So you can use it. That both the things are being reflected there, but inscriptions are material remains and they have to be corroborated with other sources. So this is it. I will keep until here only in this particular first part. There will be other parts also for the sources. This is very big. You cannot ignore it. If this topic 1 is done in a nicer manner, most of the things you will be understanding in the paper 1 of history. Take care, be blessed. Bye-bye.